I want to talk to you real quickly about Canada after this election. Who's stepping down? Who's replacing them?
So here's the funny thing. Even if Carney hadn't won the election, Carney would have definitely stayed on because he reversed the Liberals' fortunes so fast, right? So he was always a shoo-in. May, I think, wants to step down, but I think until Perrineau, how do you even pronounce his last name?
I think so, yeah.
Because like even somebody who's politically engaged, right? Because I still don't even know who the guy
know,
is, right?
yeah.
So she needs to stay on just long enough to really let him get a footing. And every time I've heard him speak, I actually do like the guy.
Cool.
But he needs time, right?
Yeah, I actually don't think I've heard him speak.
It's because he's not really getting a lot of airtime.
Yeah.
Yves-François Blanchet might stick around because he is fairly popular, but the problem is that the bloc is losing a lot of voters because all of a sudden Quebec nationalists are like, nobody breaks up Canada but me.
Right.
If anybody's going to ruin Canada, it's going to be the Quebecois. It is not going to be the Americans.
Yeah.
So he might have to step down because the party might have to take a turn, but he still is quite popular amongst their base. Singh is out.
Yeah.
Dude needs to just take his walk in the snow.
Yeah.
And
go on a little quest.
Just go find himself, right?
Yeah. Who do you think's replacing him?
And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Matthew Green, I think, is because he is so adamant in his socialism.
Yeah.
I think
he's Hamilton. I'm from Hamilton.
Right. And I think that having somebody in the NDP from Ontario probably does them some benefit because they can play up their numbers here a bit. And I think that if they were to run with somebody like him, maybe their vote share might not get as high as it was under Singh. But I think that he would do a really good job of focusing on the ridings where they could be
a bit
successful.
more strategic.
Because that, and like if it's not him, I don't know who else in the NDP has enough of a platform who will maintain their seat.
Yeah.
Like Blake Desjardins out of, I can't remember what province they're from. But like, there's a lot of these really good NDP MPs who might lose their seats, and you don't want somebody who doesn't have a seat. And Matthew Green might lose his seat. Like it's a neck and neck with the Liberals,
right? And
Pierre's gone. If Pierre can't win this election,
you think he's
and it's not a minority either. Pierre has to win a majority because in a minority, nobody will partner with them.
Yeah,
because nobody wants to work with him because he's like. It's like he went to a pool party and he actively chose to pee in the pool and tell everybody he peed in the pool. Nobody wants to swim with him right now.
It's like creating a weird purple cloud behind him.
Yeah, you know that libel they say where there's dye in the pool? He brought the dye with him to like mark his territory.
Yeah.
This is where I have peed. Nobody work with me, please.
Yeah.
And we can already see the Conservatives, the knives have come out.
Yeah.
So
who do you think's replacing him?
It depends. So Jason Kenney immediately was like, this is my future for Conservatives. Like, didn't even let Pierre's polling numbers go down before he started doing that because he smelled blood in the water. And that's the thing. When people smell blood in the water, like Chrystia Freeland, right? Turned on Trudeau. It just sucks for her that people associated her brand with Trudeau and there was no chance for her. But there's blood in the water and Doug's team is obviously sniffing at it.
Doug's team is.
Right. Because
you think Doug Ford would replace Pierre?
So Doug's campaign manager and Doug's pollster, Nick Kuvalis, have definitely been hinting at the idea that Conservatives need to become progressive Conservatives again. So there's a large fight in the Conservative Party between the ideological wing that runs Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC and the ideological wing of Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantics. And it comes down to progressive Conservatives versus reform.
Which, can you just explain that very briefly? I know we're getting to the end of the episode here, so sorry if it didn't make sense when we were talking this whole time.
If you were not alive in the 90s or you were very young in the 90s, you might not know.
I was a baby.
Yeah, before the Conservative Party of Canada, we had the Progressive Conservatives under Brian Mulroney, and then that collapsed under Kim Campbell, and that broke apart, and we had the Canadian Alliance.
This is why they can't let women lead things.
Oh yeah, that glass ceiling, right? They just you gotta throw women under the bus and then prevent them from ever running again.
Yeah, and then create the worst political party. That's right.
Yeah, that's the maniacal. Like it really does suck that it's true. Like that. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But there was the Canadian Alliance and there was the Reform Party. And one side of that was like, we're going to be more progressive. And the other side of that was, let's be as angry as we can.
Yeah,
and
but progressive in the sense of like, it was like truly fiscally conservative, more like socially
neutral, I would say. They weren't going to like cheer for trans people to be doing whatever, but like they would never have attacked the LGBTQ community in any way, right? So like that's like with Doug, right? Doug, in the literal sense, might be homophobic if you look at his family's history, but Doug is not in the like colloquial sense homophobic. He will never do anything to attack the queer community. Even when you saw there was a moment where he started talking about trans kids in sports, he immediately stopped talking about it. Even though the politics weren't going against him, it's not even like it was like politically unadvantageous. It's just like, that's not the brand of a progressive conservative. A progressive conservative focuses on the economy. That's all they focus on. And there are so many people who vote for the Liberals who would vote for a progressive conservative party. And I think that there's a value in having that. And so if Doug was to take over the Conservative Party, because the other person who's running is Melissa Lantsman, and she's basically Pierre, but like she won't get the vote as much because she's a gay woman, and there's gonna be a lot of conservatives who just aren't gonna support that, which sucks. But like, that's who your base is,
right?
And like, she also.
So you're
has
saying that it'll depend on which direction the Conservative Party wants to go, and who will end up replacing them after the
Conservative
election.
voters, please elect Doug Ford as the next leader of the Conservative Party. It will get rid of him out of Ontario, and it'll make my life better.
I love it.
It has nothing to do with the federal part. I just want Doug Ford out of Ontario. but honestly, he would have the best chance of winning, I think, because without somebody who's a little more politically central.
I like that.
And Jason Kenney, I think, is trying to do that, but Jason Kenney is way too associated with Harper and the craziness out of Alberta.
Yeah. The Alberta boys.
Did you ever hear what Jason Kenney said about Danielle Smith?
No, but I want to know so bad.
This is great because like when it came out, it was like so salacious, but like it never really broke into like the mainstream. Basically, the United Conservative Party kicked out Jason Kenney, and they were like, yeah, we don't want him. He's not conservative enough. So that's where Danielle Smith, out of nowhere from being a radio host, like became the leader of the Conservatives. And when he was on his way out, he was caught on a hot mic saying the lunatics are now running the asylum. Yeah, so that's the guy who wants to now run the Conservative Party.
Yeah, Jason.
And I think he wants to take back control of the lunatic of the asylum,
yes,
right? But like he already gave up control in Alberta. I don't trust him to take control federally.
Yeah, someone's got to lead the asylum, though. Tough job.
Well, if we make them not an asylum anymore, it would be great. I think we need to have normal conservatives again.
I love it.
Make conservatives normal again.
Let's get that on hats. Make them chill.
Make conservatives not talk about biological clocks again.
I would buy that hat so much.